remind you of something that hopefully you haven't forgotten, but it's that I'm glad you're here. Welcome to Westmark. I think it's something we just skip over when we say that. Welcome, you know? I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here. All of us carry around this stress and struggles, and we have pain. We have all sorts of things that interrupt us. And that brokenness, it can pretty easily feel like we're the only ones. It can pretty quickly feel like the struggles that I feel are unique to the world. That no one else struggles as much as I do. Everyone else seems to have it a little bit more together. And that, over time, begins to make us feel like we just don't belong. But here's the thing. This morning, what I hope, one of the things you walk away with is that being a broken person who would like to grow, being a broken person who knows they need to heal, that doesn't actually make you the odd man out. It means you're in pretty good company. In fact, that's why we come to church at all. When we show up to church, what we're doing is a testimony just to say, man, I need some help. I just don't have this figured out. I need some other people to help me follow God. And as you're going to see in this series, as we kick off this morning, I hope it really convinces you, I hope it sticks with you that those are the people that Jesus wanted to spend time with. Those are the people that Jesus met, that he walked with, the ones who knew they needed help. I want to tell you this morning a little story real quick about how I'm a good friend, okay? I'm going to convince you. I had his friend Tony. We were working together. We were up in a cherry picker, the lift, JLG, and we had to work on some winterizing, some siding. It was really, really high up. It was like 90 feet up about. And as we get in and we get strapped in and then we're ready to go and we're headed up, and I watch in real time just like Tony, as the further we go up, they go up real slow, and the further we go up, the tighter he's gripping things, and the wider his eyes are getting, and he's locking his legs in, and he's just, I'm not sure what that would happen. If you fell, none of that would help, but he seemed to think so. And I just realized, I'm like, man, Tony's really scared of heights. And as a friend, I was like, I should help him with some exposure therapy. Because I love him. And so we get up and we get all the way up there and the wind's starting to, you get that high up, you get quite a bit of movement, and he's flipping out. And so there's this little, you can articulate those things all different ways, and one of the ways is there's this little switch, and it just takes the basket that you're in and it just tilts it like this. And if you're not expecting it, it can be somewhat surprising. And so I hit that, and at the same time, I just let out a very loud scream. So then he screams. And okay, so my screaming turns to laughter, and his screaming turns to crying. And he hits the floor, the grating there, and his fingers are just like through the grating, And there's a couple outcomes to this situation. One of them was that I had to finish all the work alone, which I felt was unkind. The second outcome was that Tony was still afraid of heights, pretty badly. And the third was this, I realized just in real time, I watched this reminder of how our fears will paralyze us. It was just this very clear thing about when you have to interact with a fear, when you're not actually able to, right? When you're not going to face it well, the only thing you do is you cope. You just cope. You figure it out. And most of the time, for most of us, it looks like we just kind of get paralyzed. We just get stuck. Fears will paralyze us. And if you're being honest with yourself, most of the places, if you look at your life and you go, man, these are some things I want to see change. These are some things that I know I need to fix. The places that you're not having any movement, the places where you're most stuck, that's just where this fear. And you just don't want to deal with it. So we cope. We figure out ways around it. Whether it's gripping tighter or sinking down, and you just get set and you say, I'm gonna get through this because whatever happens, I can't face the fear. Fears are gonna get you paralyzed. Now here's the thing. This morning, when you think about fear, it could be a lot of things. It could be many things that you're afraid of. Most often, when we are stuck and we don't do the work that needs to be done, it's because we're afraid of rejection. We're afraid we're not going to be accepted. We're afraid of failure. We're afraid that we're going to be found out. And this fear of these things are going to sink you down where you're at. You're going to figure out how to cope. And then you're going to say, well, I'm too ashamed of what I've done or what's been done to me. I'm too afraid of what people will think. And that fear just forces you to say, I can't move any further. And we stay. Now, in Mark 5, we're going to meet Jesus in an interesting place. Because there's a couple people who are afraid, but what's happened now is they've reached such a point of desperation that their faith in Jesus has actually overcome their fear. So there's a point here where if you were to stay, you would just miss it completely. And then there's an action point where faith will actually overpower the fear and it'll cause you to act. That faith can do that. But here's what I want you to realize about Jesus' teaching this morning. What we're going to see in the book of Mark is that you can't step out in faith if you are sunk down in fear. That you're not going to be able to take the steps forward. You won't be able to move forward in life. You won't be able to move forward in healing or in fixing the broken pieces to do the work that needs to be done if you are so sunk down in your own fears that you enslave yourselves to them. We can't stay there. We can't. You won't be able to step out in faith if you're so sunk down in fear that you won't act. I want to show you that this morning from Mark chapter 5, starting in verse 21. It says this: When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the synagogue leaders named Jairus came up, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. And he asked him urgently, "My little daughter is near death. Come and lay your hands on her so that she may be healed and live." And Jesus went with him. And a large crowd followed and pressed around him. Now a woman was there who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years. And she had endured a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all that she had. Instead of getting better, she grew worse. When she had heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. For she kept saying, "If only I touch his clothes, I'll be healed." And at once the bleeding stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. And Jesus knew at once that power had gone out from him. He turned around in the crowd and he said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing around you and you say, 'Who touched me?'" But he looked around to see who had done it. Then the woman, with fear and trembling, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell down before him and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." And while he was still speaking, people came from the synagogue leader's house saying, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" But Jesus, paying no attention to what was said, told the synagogue leader, "Do not be afraid. Just believe." And he did not let anyone follow him, except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they came to the house of the synagogue leader, where he saw noisy confusion and people weeping and wailing loudly. When he entered, he said to them, "Why are you distressed and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they began to making fun of him. But he forced them all outside, and he took the child's father and mother into his own companions and went into the room where the child was. And then, gently, taking the child by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha koum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." And the girl got up at once and began to walk around. And she was 12 years old. And they were completely astonished at this. He strictly ordered that no one should know about this and told them to give her something to eat. This passage is a sandwich story, okay? This passage, you have some desperate people on both ends, but you start with the one, Jairus, and then you have this whole story of the woman in the middle, and then you finish with Jairus. So there's this little sandwich, and he's doing that on purpose. Mark is writing this out in a way that's really intentional to weave together some of these really important things. So let's take them one at a time, though. Jairus would be this respected individual. He's a synagogue leader which synagogue would be for the Jewish people, it would be basically their church, right? That's where they go every week. That's where they worship. And as the leader there, he'd be in charge of kind of organizing it and getting the scrolls and keeping track of the manuscripts and the readers and organizing what it means in the community. And pretty respected guy, pretty high up in the community there. He'd be an important official. But this guy is watching his 12-year-old daughter fade. He's losing his little girl, and he's desperate. And there's a lot that you can read into this as you think about it. And I'm not sure. I wonder how much he knew about Jesus. Did he know so much? Did he hear from Jesus' teaching? It doesn't tell us. I wonder if he just heard just the faintest hope that, there's this guy, and he's actually going to come across the sea today, and he's going to be here, and he might be able to heal her. That he just knew enough. He just knew enough about Jesus, I wonder. But he's that desperate. So he starts running. And he pushes his way to the front. And he falls down right in front of Jesus. And there's hundreds of people, maybe thousands. And he's pushing his way through this whole crowd to get there, to fall in front. Sort of a big deal, right? Jesus is trying to get somewhere. This guy falls in front of him. Jesus can't go anywhere. The idea here is that he would fall, that he would actually grab a hold of his ankles, right? And he's just pleading, please save my daughter. Have you ever pled with Jesus? Has there been pleading in your heart before where you've been so desperate that you really wish that you could just grab Jesus, that you could say, look, Jesus, don't go anywhere else. God, I just want you to focus only on this. Would you just listen to this one thing? This is so important. Have you ever felt that desperate before? And Jesus listens. That might be the most surprising thing about this whole story, is that he says, okay. The heart of God, the compassion of God shining through. This is the character of the God we worship. This is the heart. That he would see us in our desperation and in our pain, and he would move toward us. And he would say, okay. And he would come. That's this faith, that in desperation, he would reach out, and Jesus would say, let's go. That's Jesus' response to our faith. I hope you understand that. When we come to him, he responds. Now we get interrupted in the story, right? This little girl has to wait because there's this woman. And this woman breaks our heart. She breaks our heart for a couple reasons. Because she has this medical condition, right? And there's a few things about this medical condition, if you think about it for a minute, that kind of unfold. Number one, obviously, she's hemorrhaging, she's bleeding all the time. This is unhealthy. This is a bad thing for her health. She's being harmed the longer this goes on. So that's number one. Number two is it says that she spent all that she had on this. She's sick. She needs help. And it's interesting phrasing in here where, I don't know if the NIV captures it as well, where it says, she had endured a great deal under the care of many doctors. It really says she had endured much suffering. The idea is that she's suffering with this illness, and then the more she pursues it, the more she's trying to fix it, she's trying to get better, she's trying. And that's causing her to suffer. Even in the process of trying to figure this out, it's getting worse. And third, it says that the growing worse it actually just makes her unclean. Now, you have to understand something. This is a little bit removed from us, but in the Jewish community, in that context, there's be these laws, these social laws about being clean and unclean, right? In the Old Testament, God gave Israel these laws for society to say, look, there's times and there's places where things are unclean. There's activities that are what I'm going to call ceremonially unclean, and these ones are ceremonially clean. And it's not as easy to say, well, these ones are wrong and these ones are right. That's not what he's saying. What God does is he says, I'm going to give these laws so that it creates such a clear picture in your life, in the life of Israel, that it's so obvious how holy God is, that he doesn't even want things that have been affected by sin to come close to him. That's how holy he is. So it would be things like you have a loved one, right? And this loved one dies, and so you need to bury them. And so you would move their body to the grave. And well, guess what? Now you're ceremonially unclean. That's not to say that you're sinful or you're doing, no, but there would be washings you would go through. And since you're not continuing to deal with dead bodies, you are now ceremonially clean and you're able to come back into fellowship. But here's the deal. To be bleeding, she would be ceremonially unclean, which normally wouldn't be a big deal because she would stop, but she hasn't. So for 12 years, she has been on the outside. And there's ramifications for this. It's kind of like COVID, right? Where if you had COVID, they were just like, well, go home and just sit there for a while, okay? And then you can come back, right? That's how most of us dealt with COVID. That's kind of what would happen with this. It's like, okay, well, you just got to go home. And then when you're done, when you're able to be ceremonially cleaned, you go through the washings, you can come on back. But she couldn't. So people couldn't sit where she sat. She couldn't touch people without making them ceremonially unclean. Many jobs she wouldn't be able to do. She couldn't go to synagogue with her family. She couldn't be a part of these things. This uncleanness forced her life to be separated. So she spends all her money on it. She's like, I got to fix this. And that makes it worse. And so for 12 years of her life, she is further ostracized, further put out. And there just becomes a sense of shame around it. When can she come back? When can she be a part? This effect of sin in the world has pushed her. Now I want you to kind of consider these two people. You have one man and you have one who's a woman. You have one who's become poor, just like destitute in this, but yet Jairus is pretty well renowned and he still has resources. You have one who's accepted. You have one who's rejected. You have one with honor. You have one with shame. You have one who's leading the synagogue. You have one who has not even allowed in the synagogue. The one has a 12-year-old who's dying, and the other one's been dying for 12 years. And both are helpless. Both are desperate. Both need Jesus to heal them. So I want you to imagine this as much as you can, this woman working her way through the crowd, because that's what she does. She's not supposed to be there. She's touching these people. She's making them ceremonially unclean. They wouldn't want her around, and yet she's there because she's desperate and because she believes. And maybe you don't feel like you're supposed to be here. You don't feel like you belong. That you're not quite enough. That you're stuck. That you're dirty. I'll be honest. There's times where I feel like, man, I shouldn't be here. I shouldn't be walking up here. I haven't been the person I'm supposed to be. I haven't been the husband I'm supposed to be or the dad I'm supposed to be. I've let people down. There's a sense of shame. There's a sense of like, man, I don't know how I could belong here. But we should be desperate enough. And we should believe enough that we say, well, actually, this is where I'm supposed to be. There's no better place for me to be than to come find Jesus. This woman had faith that was greater than the fear. The fear that kept her stuck and kept her away. And maybe all these other things that she tried, they couldn't help her. Only the power of God could help her. That's the only thing that could heal her. I want you to notice the difference here too, that Jairus came up and he pushes his way through. He makes his way to the front and he falls down and he stops Jesus. Jesus, pay attention to me. She didn't feel like she could do that. No. She came up behind him. She snaked her way through the crowd. She's so ashamed. She doesn't want anybody to know she's there. And she said, if I could just touch the corner. You know, they would have these robes and there'd be like the tassels hanging off. And that's really, I think, the language what she's talking about. That she's like, if I could just like touch the tassel, that'll be enough. That's what she believed. That's how strong that faith was. And that's how desperate she became. Her actions are actually super surprising. It doesn't strike us because we're not in that context, but this idea of this woman touching this man in public when she's unclean and he's a teacher, it's like, whoa. She shouldn't even be touching anyone. And she goes up and she touches Jesus. See, and this is massively important. Don't miss this, okay? That every other time that she has reached out into the world because of her uncleanness, because of the things that she's ashamed of, every time she's reached out, she's made other people unclean. But this time, when she touches Jesus, he makes her clean. That's the point. That's the point when you see what she's doing here, that like approaching Jesus in faith, not pursuing my own, not trying everything myself, not able to fix this all myself, but to be desperate enough to say, I'm going to trust Jesus alone to fix this. I'm going to go to him. I'm going to pursue him. That his purity makes her clean. It's the only time that's ever happened. It's the only time that she's been able to get rid of this. And I don't know, maybe your fear has taught you something similar, that you're too dirty, that you're too far gone, that you're too broken, you're too damaged. If that's true, if you believe those things, then you need to be restored by the gospel of Jesus. That there's no sin we have that's too big for him. There's no darkness that we have that his light cannot overcome. There's nothing that's so dirty, that's so broken, that's so far gone. I know you have darkness in your history. I know you have a past. I know you think you're really special, but you're just not that special, all right? Jesus is pretty capable. He can handle it. But we just don't bring it to him. We don't bring these things to Jesus. She was unclean and she was suffering, and she only got worse as she tried everything else. I just think there's a lesson in there. That no matter what else we try, the fear that traps us and says, you need to get cleaned up first, and then you come to Jesus, it'll just get worse. It'll just get worse. But for those who are humble enough and desperate enough, ones who believe, she stepped out. She pursued healing, and she found it. And actually, what's interesting about this story is that it says that she felt it right away, and so did Jesus. And I don't know what that feels like. I don't know if like his battery drained a little bit, you know? So somebody's like, hey, who took my sparkle? You know, there's something missing now. I don't know what that was, but he knew. He knew something went on here. And he starts pointing fingers. Was it you? Who did this? Was it you? And it says this. I find this absolutely fascinating. It says, then the woman, with fear and trembling. I had to sit there for a minute and figure that out. Fear and trembling. And I couldn't really, why is that there? Why did Mark record that? Why is that so important? It didn't really click until I got later in the verse where it says that she came and she fell down and she told him the whole truth. The whole truth. And I was like, these two things, they just don't feel like they fit in the story. I just don't really understand. Because it would make sense that, all right, he's healing this guy, he's going to go heal this guy's daughter, and then this lady comes up and she touches him and she scampers off, healed. We'll be like, wow, like Jesus is really powerful, right? Like that. But that wasn't the point. And so I sat with this for a long time. What is it that, why is there fear and trembling, number one? Why is that the response? And number two, what is it that she has to confess? And as I sat there and I figured it out, okay? The point is that Jesus did not come to heal the symptoms. Jesus did not die on the cross to heal the symptoms. That he could have just healed her body and then she could have left. But that's not really what he was after. That really wasn't the point of all this. Jesus didn't come to just treat the symptoms. If she was physically healed but still trapped in her fears, still enslaved to her shame, that if her heart was still not healed, then it really wouldn't have done a whole lot of good, would it? And you realize, man, that God allowed this woman to suffer for so long, so she was finally ready to stand before Jesus and confess. That she knew Jesus, she knew in fear and trembling, this is God, that he's hearing me, that I don't deserve to be heard by him, that I do deserve to be damned, I do deserve consequences, but now I'm standing before him, I'm confessing the whole truth. That I need you, Jesus. That I've tried everything else. And nothing heals me. Nothing fixes me. But when she stood and she confessed that when her faith finally overcame what she feared, all the judgment in the eyes, and she was set free. She was set free. No more fear, no more bondage. And I wonder if God is bringing you through the immediate thing because he's calling you into freedom of the spiritual thing. I wonder if that's what he's asking, is if you confess, you could be set free. If you leave it with him, and you're free from the shame, and you're free from the uncleanness, and you're free from all that separation, and you're free from all the brokenness that's followed you for so long. See, the moment here is that same heart of God just shining through that character, because when she does that, he calls her daughter. To be desperate and to believe that she isn't cast out, but she's welcomed in. Interesting fact here, this is the only woman that Jesus calls a daughter. She doesn't even get a name. She's coming from nothing. She's nobody. She could not figure this out. She's been suffering forever and ever. This has been worse and worse, and she hasn't done this right, and she didn't know what to do, and she was lost for so long, but yet Jesus would call her daughter. And not only that, that he would say, you get to go in peace. To now go in peace, go have peace, to live out peace, experience what it means to be at peace with God. Here's the question is, what do you think would happen if you were to do that? If you were to come to God and you were to confess your shame and you were to say, Jesus, I have tried everything else. It isn't working. I've gone from suffering to worse, and I can't do this myself. To believe that Jesus is who he said he is. That he did come, that he did die on the cross, that he did come back from the grave, and in that, the overwhelming power. And you say, in fear and trembling, God, I can't do this by myself anymore. I'll tell you exactly what would happen. He would look at you and he would say, daughter. He would look at you and he would say, son, go in peace. He wants to heal us. He wants to restore us. To restore these things back together. Really, the word, we talk about being saved, right? In the Christian vernacular, we use that word saved. That word is sozo in the Greek. It means to put the pieces back together. When you talk about healing, you can almost use the image of like a shattered pot, and you're taking the pieces and you're putting them back. And the idea is that we would bring these shattered pieces, the brokenness, to God, and it's when we have it, it's just brokenness. But when he has it, he says, I can fix this. I can restore this. I can make this what it ought to be. So you can't buy this lie that you're too broken for Jesus. You don't need to buy this lie that you got to figure out X, Y, Z before you come. It just won't work. It'll get worse and worse. Now here's the thing. We're brought back because of this little girl. Bad news arrives, right? She's gone. She's gone. Don't bother Jesus anymore. It's too late. Why is it too late? It's too late because when somebody's sick, there's hope, right? Once somebody's dead, then there's no hope anymore. Right? Right? Okay. It's war, is it? When somebody's sick, we say, well, there's still hope here. God could do something. But when somebody's dead, that's it. Because nobody could come back from the dead. Right? Yeah. See, that's what they thought. And I have a surprise for you. Right? Turns out somebody can come back from the dead. In fact, that's sort of central to the whole Christian idea here. But these people living in this world, that the permanency of death, it's permanent. Right? Death is permanent. There's nobody that can overcome this. And so you have to imagine for a second Jairus hearing these words. Don't bother Jesus. Your daughter's gone. It's done. It's over. And Jairus hears this word from Jesus. Do not be afraid. Just believe. That's pretty literal translation there. Do not be afraid. I would only change it a little to say, do not be afraid, only believe. That's what that word means. Only. That's it. That's all you have room for is belief. No doubt, no fear, nothing. The only thing you can do here is believe. Which isn't, I don't know that we give Jairus enough credit. Like, imagine being in this scenario where your sick daughter, and then they come, they're like, oh, she's gone. It's too late. We took too long. She's gone. And then you turn and you hear Jesus say, no. Only believe. No fear, no heartbreak, no. Only believe. Do you believe that I could do something even here? Even in the face of something as permanent as death. Only believe. Jairus does. Only believe. Interesting fact, might not know this. This is where we get the hymn, Don't Stop Believing. Straight out of this passage right here. Only believe. He chooses to follow him. And because he chooses to follow in that, he has this taste of the resurrection power, which is like not something you see every day. It's not something that happens all the time. But here's the choice that's put in front of him. Are you going to step out in fear? Or excuse me, are you going to step out in faith, or are you going to stay sunk down where you are in your fear? And you almost miss it in here, but actually the grammar, Jesus is commanding him. Do not be afraid. Only believe. And I was like, man, don't we just need that? Isn't there just times in life where you're going through and you just need Jesus to show up and just give you the old 1-2, you know? Hey, don't. Believe. Don't fear. Don't give in. Don't give up. Believe. Right? Like that's just it's so obvious. But it's the core thing we struggle with. It's the core thing that we give up on. And so Jesus goes to the girl. And the problem that everyone says is permanent, the problem that can't be overcome, Jesus views as just not so permanent. This whole death thing, multiple times the Bible does this. And we are the only belief system, Christianity is the only belief system that views death as temporary. Every other belief system will provide some out. Death is really a conquering thing. You might become something else. You might be reimagined, reincarnated. You might be absorbed into some other reality. But death in and of itself is not defeated. It's not that life comes back and is fixed. It's that death wins and you go somewhere else now. Except for Christians. Christians have a very unique perspective. Multiple times that the Bible talks about death as sleep. It's very temporary for us. It's very temporary for us. Jesus goes to the girl and he says, everything that you would think is the most powerful thing that could possibly happen to you, it's just not that permanent. It's not that powerful. Everything that would make you feel weak, everything that would make you feel inadequate, everything that make you feel like there is no possible path to victory, Jesus has this figured out. So what we do is, because something is so scary and so powerful, we just submit to it. And we live in that fear. But here's a question. Just follow logically with me. If Jesus has overcome death, the most permanent thing we can experience here in this world, then should we be afraid of anything? I'm not saying you don't feel afraid. I'm just asking about the logic of it. If Jesus has overcome death, if we are the only belief system, if we're the only teachings that actually have an empty tomb, do we need to be afraid of anything? Don't be afraid. Only believe. That's what he walks us through. And that the biggest lies, the fears that tell us we're the only ones. We're the only ones. We're struggling with this. We can't overcome this. It's so hard. You're the only one. So now not am I only fearing, but I'm going to isolate. And that's where our weakest. It's the biggest lie. It's just it's not just this ashamed, rejected, sick woman, right? It's also this powerful, established, rich man. It's you, it's me, it's all of us. That we struggle and then we feel like, man, it's just going to be easier to pretend. It's going to be easier to do the mask. It's going to be easier to just avoid vulnerability, be easier to not receive counsel, not receive guidance. It's going to be easier to just avoid praying honestly before God because I just don't want to. It's just too much. It's just hard. But personally, we're invited into healing. And this is a corporate thing too. It's like every opportunity for fear is also an opportunity for faith. There's always an opportunity right there where you say, no, instead, I'm going to believe. Instead, I'm going to follow Jesus. There's a temptation here. Instead, I'm staying faithful. And that's corporate as well. Just think practically for a second. Okay, we have this building project out here, right? And we've been pushing on this for a while, and we've felt like the Lord has really called us to do this, to prepare ministry for the next generation out here. And we feel very strong about that, and because of that, we've pressed into it. And then things happen, right? Like fire code. And it adds $300,000 to our bottom line. And it's not something we can control. And to be honest, by the grace of God, we've been really running under budget by about $300,000. But the reality is we still have between $600,000 and $650,000 left to pour into that building to reach the end. And so then comes all the what ifs, right? Well, what if this? What if that? What if that? Maybe we shouldn't. Maybe we have to do this. Maybe we should abandon. But that misses the point. If God called us into doing it, then we should trust him with the outcome. Amen? If he called us into it. And it's just that simple. But then when it comes to our own fears, well, there's a lot of complex things, Noah. You don't understand. This happened to me when I was a kid. This happened in my marriage. This happened. Okay, fine. But if God's called you to be faithful in something, you just do it. You just believe. And you trust him with the outcome. That's always been what we've been called to. That's always been what we've been called to. Faith means that we trust in Jesus' divine ability and in the goodness of his timing. Right? In other words, you could say it this way, that he can and he will when it's best. That you're suffering, that you're struggling, that you have questions, and you're just, I don't know, God, when you're going to do this. I don't know if you're going to do this. And the answer is he can and he will when it's best. Even if that's not in this life. So I want that one to sink in, all right? He can and he will when it's best. So we're going to do a little group project on this one. Okay, you ready? Follow me on this one. Ready? Here we go. He can and he will when it's best. It's terrible. We're doing it again. All right, we will not leave till this is right. Okay, here we go. He can and he will when it's best. It is true. Do you believe that? With the struggle, with the pain, with the unknown, with the bad news, is he going to stay faithful to us? Is he going to give us what we need? He can, and he will, when it's best. Some of us have been sunk down and paralyzed by some fears for so long, it's hard to tell the difference between where they start and we finish, and we've been shaped by those things. And there's an invitation in this passage that says, listen, you're not the only one, and you're not the first one, and you won't be the last one. When we come to Jesus with these things, when we spend time, when we realize we are broken and we are fearful and we are bruised, but we're in pretty good company. The gospel message is still for us. Listen, you need to confess to Jesus that you need him. I don't care how mature of a Christian you are. That's what we need to do every day. That's what we do when we walk with this. You trust in his power to save you. And for all of us who are wondering if and when Jesus will relieve the suffering, will help, will finish the healing, the answer is that he can and he will when it's best. So we take our next step in faith. We pursue him in faith. But you have to step out. And you can't do that when you're sunk down in fear.